I always thought my marriage was solid. Sure, we had our ups and downs, who doesn't after 8 years together? But I trusted Emily. I believed in the life we had built. Then, one night, everything changed. It started as a simple coincidence. I had a late meeting at work, but it got cancelled last minute. Instead of heading straight home, I decided to stop by a new bar a coworker had recommended. It wasn't my usual kind of place, too loud, too flashy, but I figured a drink wouldn't hurt. That's when I saw her. At first, I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me. The flashing neon lights, the dim ambience, it made everything surreal. But as I adjusted to the setting, there was no mistaking her. Emily. My wife. Dressed in something far too revealing, leaning close to a man I had never seen before, whispering in his ear. I felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. My first instinct was denial. Maybe she had a good explanation. Maybe she was just here with friends. But as I watched from the shadows, I saw her take the man's hand and lead him toward a private room in the back. My blood ran cold. I knew then that I couldn't confront her, not yet. Not until I had all the answers. And once I did, well, I wasn't just going to sit back and let this betrayal go unanswered. I barely remember how I got home that night. My hands were gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. My mind was racing, replaying what I had seen over and over again. Emily. With another man. Leading him into a private room like it was the most natural thing in the world. I needed to be sure. I couldn't just assume the worst without proof. If I confronted her now, she'd probably lie, twist the story, make me feel like I was the crazy one. No, I had to be smart about this. The next day, I called in sick to work. My stomach was in knots, my head pounding from lack of sleep. But I had a plan. I spent the afternoon researching the club, its name, its reputation, its staff. Turns out, it wasn't just a strip club. It was one of those high-end establishments, the kind where the wealthiest men paid for more than just a private dance. That realization hit me like a punch to the gut. I needed to see more. That evening, I parked my car a block away and walked to the club, making sure to stay unnoticed. I had changed into something casual, something that wouldn't make me stand out. With a deep breath, I stepped inside, keeping my head down as I took a seat at the bar. Then, I saw her again. Emily moved with a confidence I didn't recognize. She was laughing, touching, teasing, the kind of behavior I had only ever seen glimpses of in our marriage. But with these men, she was different. More alive. More willing. My fists clenched. I stayed for over an hour, watching, absorbing every detail. I wanted to walk up to her, call her out, make a scene. But that wasn't part of the plan. No, I was going to make her pay for this in a way she'd never see coming. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her. The way she smiled at those men, the way she touched them so effortlessly, like she had done it 1,000 times before. Was this the real Emily? Had she been doing this for years? By morning, my rage had sharpened into something more dangerous, control. I wasn't going to act on impulse. I needed more than just my own eyes as proof. So, I dug deeper. I started with her phone. She had always been protective of it, but I knew her passcode, she used the same one for everything. The moment she stepped into the shower, I grabbed it and scrolled through her messages. Nothing suspicious. But then I noticed something odd, an app one had never seen before, disguised under a boring icon labeled Notes. I opened it. A sinking feeling filled my stomach as I saw the messages. Appointments. Locations. Clients. Some names were just initials, others had full details. Prices listed next to each one. I stared at the screen, my hands trembling. This wasn't just cheating. This was a business. My wife wasn't just a dancer, she was selling herself. The shower turned off. I barely had time to put her phone back before she stepped into the bedroom, towel wrapped around her. She smiled at me like nothing was wrong. Like our entire life wasn't a lie. I forced a smile back. "Morning," she said, walking over to kiss me. I let her. Because now, I knew exactly what I had to do. I spent the next few days pretending nothing had changed. It was harder than I thought, smiling at her, kissing her goodnight, listening to her stories about work, all while knowing she was lying to my face. But I had to play my part. I started observing her more closely, noticing the little things I had overlooked before. The late nights that didn't always add up. The extra cash in her purse when I knew she hadn't been paid yet. The expensive jewelry she never explained. She had built an entire secret life right under my nose. One night, as we sat on the couch watching TV, she casually mentioned having to work late again. "Big project coming up," she said, stretching. "Might not be home until midnight." I nodded, feigning disinterest. "No problem. I might turn in early, anyway." She kissed me on the cheek, grabbed her purse, and left. The moment she was gone, I went straight to work. I opened her laptop, expecting the same level of secrecy as her phone. But she must have thought I was too trusting, too naive, because she hadn't even logged out of her email. And there it was. Confirmation. More client messages. More appointments. An entire schedule detailing when and where she met them. Payment details. Special requests. I clicked through, my stomach twisting with every new revelation. Some names I recognized, men from our gym, a guy she had once called a work friend, even one of my old classmates from college. My hands clenched into fists. It wasn't just the betrayal. It was the audacity. She thought she could live this double life forever. That I would never find out. But she was wrong. Very, very wrong. I knew confronting her outright wouldn't be enough. She would lie, twist the truth, maybe even cry and beg for forgiveness. No, I needed something undeniable. Something that would expose her for who she really was. So, I set a trap. That afternoon, I created a fake profile on the same app she used for scheduling her clients. A throwaway email, a generic name, nothing that could be traced back to me. I sent her a message, posing as a potential customer, asking if she was available for a private meeting. Minutes later, she responded. "Of course. What are you looking for?" I stared at the message, my heartbeat pounding in my ears. She didn't even hesitate. No second guessing. No suspicion. Just straight to business. I played along, arranging a date for the following night at a high-end hotel across town. Somewhere she wouldn't recognize. Somewhere I could control the situation. The moment she confirmed, I knew there was no turning back. This wasn't just revenge anymore. This was justice. And I was going to make sure she got exactly what she deserved. The next evening, I arrived at the hotel an hour early. The room was already booked, under my fake name, of course. I had made sure to choose a suite with a perfect vantage point, one that would allow me to see her before she saw me. Every detail was carefully planned. A hidden camera was set up in the corner, angled toward the door. I had even arranged for a friend, someone discreet, to wait in the lobby, ready to take pictures of her arrival. Now, all I had to do was wait. At exactly 9 p.m., my phone buzzed. "I'm here. Room number." I swallowed the lump in my throat, steadying my hands before typing back the number. Minutes later, there was a soft knock at the door. I took a deep breath, preparing myself for the moment I had been dreading, and anticipating, for days. Slowly, I opened the door. And there she was. Dressed in something she had never worn for me. Hair styled differently, perfume heavier than usual. Her eyes flickered with recognition, and for the first time, I saw something I had never seen in her before. Pure, unfiltered fear. For a split second, we just stood there. Emily's eyes darted around the room, as if trying to make sense of what was happening. Then, her face paled. "Honey." Her voice was shaky, uncertain. "What are you doing here?" I stepped aside, letting her see the hotel suite, the dim lighting, the neatly made bed. The realization hit her like a slap. "What am I doing here?" I repeated, my voice eerily calm. "No, Emily. The real question is, what are you doing here?" She opened her mouth, then closed it again. Her mind was racing, searching for a lie that would save her. But there was no way out. Not this time. I walked over to the small table where I had set my laptop. With a single click, the screen lit up, revealing everything: her messages, her client lists, her transaction history. And in the corner of the screen, a live feed from the hidden camera. I watched as she followed my gaze, her breath hitching when she saw herself on the screen. Her hands trembled. I can explain." I let out a quiet, humorless laugh. "Oh, I'm sure you can. But here's the thing, Emily, I don't want to hear it." Tears welled in her eyes. She reached for me, but I stepped back. "You were never supposed to find out," she whispered. I met her gaze, my voice sharp as a knife. "But I did. And now, she was going to pay for it." Emily took a shaky breath, her hands wringing together. "Please, just listen to me," she whispered. I crossed my arms, leaning against the table. "Listen to what?" "More lies." Her lip trembled. "It's not what you think." I cut her off with a cold laugh. "Not what I think. Emily, I watched you. I saw you with them. I read your messages. I know everything." Tears spilled down her cheeks now. "I never wanted to hurt you," she choked out. I was just. Just what? My voice was razor sharp. Just cheating. Just lying. Just selling yourself to other men behind my back. She flinched, as if my words physically hurt her. "It wasn't about them. It was never about them," she pleaded. "I did it for us." A bitter laugh escaped me. "For us? That's your excuse." "I wanted to help with money," she rushed out, desperation in her voice. I know things have been tight, and I didn't want to burden you, so I slammed my fist on the table, making her jump. "Don't you dare make this about me. I would have done anything for you, Emily. I worked hard for us, for our life. And all this time, you were out there, making a fool out of me." She shook her head, sobbing now. "I didn't want to lose you." I stared at her for a long moment, my rage simmering beneath the surface. Then I exhaled slowly, my voice turning eerily calm. "Oh, Emily," I said. "You already have." Emily collapsed onto the edge of the bed, burying her face in her hands. Her whole body shook with silent sobs, but I felt nothing. No sympathy. No sadness. Just a cold, hollow sense of finality. I had spent years loving this woman. Trusting her. Building a life with her. And now, I was looking at a stranger. When she finally lifted her head, her eyes were swollen and red. What are you going to do?" she whispered. I tilted my head, watching her squirm. "That depends," I said smoothly. "What do you think you deserve?" She flinched, her breath coming out uneven. "Please, don't tell anyone. Don't ruin my life." A humorless smile tugged at my lips. "Your life?" I repeated. "You destroyed our life, Emily. You betrayed me, humiliated me, and you're worried about your reputation." She swallowed hard, her silence telling me everything I needed to know. I leaned in, lowering my voice. "You don't get to make demands anymore. I decide how this ends." Her lower lip trembled. "I'll do anything," she whispered. Just don't leave me." I stared at her, unblinking. Then I stood up, adjusting my jacket. You don't get to ask for anything, Emily, I said, heading toward the door. Because I'm not staying. Her breath hitched. Wait. I turned back one last time, my voice like ice. You lost me the moment you knocked on that door. Then, without another word, I walked out, leaving her alone with the wreckage of everything she had destroyed. And I wasn't done with her yet. Walking out of that hotel room felt like closing the door on my old life. But I wasn't finished. Not yet. Emily thought the worst was over, that I would just disappear, lick my wounds, and let her get away with it. She had no idea what was coming. That night, I went home and pulled up every piece of evidence I had gathered. The messages. The appointment logs. The hidden camera footage. Every detail of her secret life, neatly organized. Then, I made my first move. I sent an anonymous email to her employer. Attached were screenshots of her business transactions, the private messages she had exchanged with clients, even the hotel booking she had made just hours earlier. I didn't need to write much. Thought you should know what your employee does after hours. Might not be the image your company wants. Then, I hit send. The next morning, Emily's world began to crumble. I stayed home from work the next morning, waiting. I knew it wouldn't take long. At exactly 10:17 a.m., my phone buzzed. Emily. I let it ring. Then another call. And another. Each one going straight to voicemail. A minute later, a text popped up. Emily, something's wrong. Call me. Please. I smirked. Oh, something was definitely wrong. By noon, she stopped calling. I checked her company's website, refreshing their employee directory. Her name had already disappeared. She had been fired. At 2:30 p.m., another message. Emily, did you do this? I just lost my job. Please, I need to talk to you. I stared at the words, letting them sink in. This was only the beginning. I typed back 2 words. You deserve it. Then, I blocked her number. Next, it was time for the second strike. Emily had spent years crafting an image, a devoted wife, a hardworking woman. She cared about how people saw her. So, I made sure they saw everything. By evening, a carefully curated message had reached her closest friends, her colleagues, even her family. Screenshots, proof, undeniable evidence of her double life. No context, no explanations, just the cold, hard truth. And then, I sat back and waited for the explosion. By the time the sun had set, Emily's world was burning. My phone, still blocked from her number, remained silent. But my inbox? That was a different story. Mutual friends. Her sister. Even one of her so-called clients. The messages poured in. Some in shock, some in disgust, a few asking if it was real. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. At exactly 9:42 p.m., there was a frantic pounding at my front door. I didn't move. I knew who it was. Please. Emily's voice cracked through the door. I need to talk to you. I remained on the couch, letting her desperation fill the empty air between us. Another round of knocking. More frantic now. I lost everything, she sobbed. My job, my friends, everyone knows. Yes, Emily. They do. A long silence. I could hear her breathing, shuddering. Then, softer. Please. I don't know where else to go. My hands curled into fists. The audacity. I stood up, walking to the door. Then, I said the only thing that mattered. You should have thought about that before you sold yourself to other men. And with that, I turned off the porch light, plunging her into darkness. I stood by the door, listening as her sobs turned into quiet, defeated sniffles. Then, silence. A few seconds later, I heard the sound of her footsteps retreating down the driveway. I didn't watch her leave. I didn't care where she went. She was no longer my problem. By the next morning, I had expected the worst of it to be over. But Emily wasn't done. She showed up at my office. I spotted her through the glass doors, her hair disheveled, eyes red and swollen. My receptionist looked hesitant, unsure if she should let Emily through. I gave a single shake of my head. She had no place here. No place in my life. I watched as the receptionist relayed the message. Emily's face crumpled. She turned and walked out, shoulders hunched like a defeated soldier after a lost battle. I should have felt satisfaction. Victory. But all I felt was nothing. I had spent years loving a woman who never really existed. And now, I was finally free from her. The only thing left to do was make sure she never came back. And I had one final move to make. Emily had lost her job. Her friends. Her reputation. But there was still one thing tying us together, our marriage. That was about to change. I wasted no time. The morning after she showed up at my office, I scheduled a meeting with a divorce attorney. No waiting, no second chances. I wanted everything cut clean. When I handed the lawyer the evidence I had gathered, her messages, the client lists, the transactions, he barely blinked before nodding. "This is more than enough," he said. "We can move quickly." That was exactly what I wanted. Emily, on the other hand, wasn't ready to let go. The moment she received the divorce papers, she called me from an unknown number. I didn't answer. Then came the texts, long paragraphs of apologies, of begging, of empty justifications. I ignored them all. Then, 3 days later, she showed up at the house. I opened the door, standing firm in the doorway so she couldn't step inside. Her eyes were hollow, her face thin from stress. "Please," she whispered. "Can we just talk?" I stared at her, expressionless. "We have nothing to talk about." Tears welled up in her eyes. "I lost everything. My job, my friends, you." Her voice broke. "I don't have anywhere to go." I leaned against the doorframe, crossing my arms. "And whose fault is that?" She swallowed hard. "I know I messed up." I let out a quiet laugh. "Messed up? Emily, you led a double life. You cheated on me. You let other men." I stopped myself, shaking my head. "No. You don't get to play the victim here." She clasped her hands together. "I can't take it back," she whispered. "But I still love you." I stiffened. She saw my hesitation and took a step closer. "I did this for us," she insisted. "For money. For our future. I thought I could keep it separate, that it wouldn't matter. But it did. And I lost you." Her hand reached for mine. I didn't let her touch me. Instead, I spoke slowly, deliberately. "You lost me the first time you walked into that club." Her lip trembled. "Please," she said again. "I know I don't deserve it, but I'm asking for one more chance. I'll do anything to fix this." I studied her for a long moment. Then I leaned in, lowering my voice to a whisper. "You already had one chance," I said. "And you sold it." Her breath hitched. I straightened, pulling the divorce papers from my pocket. "Sign them," I said, holding them out. She hesitated, staring at the papers as if they physically hurt her. "Emily," I warned, my patience razor thin. She took the pen with trembling fingers. And then, in shaky strokes, she signed away everything we had built together. The moment the ink dried, I took the papers back, stepped inside, and shut the door in her face. She didn't knock again. I watched through the window as she stood there for a long moment, staring at the door as if willing it to open. Then, shoulders slumped, she turned and walked away. This time, I didn't feel anger. Or sadness. Or even victory. I just felt free. For the first time in years, I was free from the lies, the betrayal, the weight of loving someone who had never really loved me back. And as I locked the door behind me, I knew, this was the ending she deserved. But for me, it was only the beginning. The silence in the house was different now. It wasn't lonely, it wasn't empty, it was peaceful. A kind of peace I hadn't felt in years. For the first time in a long while, I could breathe. The divorce was finalized quickly. With all the evidence against her, she didn't contest it. She couldn't. I made sure she got nothing, no alimony, no settlement, not even a farewell. Just a blank space where our life together used to be. She tried reaching out a few times after that. Emails. Voicemails. Even an old-fashioned letter, as if writing it down would somehow make me forget what she had done. I ignored them all. People often say that closure comes from understanding, from forgiving. But I didn't need that. My closure came from knowing she could never hurt me again. Still, the damage she had done lingered in small ways. I had to rebuild trust in myself, in others. I spent months focusing on work, on hobbies I had long abandoned. I hit the gym harder. Picked up old books I had left unread. Traveled for the first time in years, just because I could. And one day, without even realizing it, I started to feel happy again. Then, there was her. I met Natalie by accident, at a bookstore of all places. She was standing in the aisle, flipping through a novel I had just finished reading. When I casually mentioned that it had a terrible ending, she laughed, and somehow, that small conversation turned into coffee, which turned into dinner, which turned into something I hadn't expected. Something real. Natalie was different. Honest. Grounded. She had a way of making even the simplest moments feel meaningful. And the best part? I never had to doubt her. With her, I didn't have to second-guess every late night. I didn't have to check her phone for hidden apps or wonder who she was texting. For the first time in a long time, love felt safe. One evening, months after Emily had faded into nothing more than a distant memory, Natalie and I sat on my porch, watching the sunset. She turned to me and smiled. "You look different," she said. "Lighter." I thought about that. About how much weight I had carried. The anger, the betrayal, the heartbreak. And how, sitting there beside her, all of it felt like a past life. "I feel different," I admitted. She laced her fingers through mine. "Good," she said softly. And as I looked at her, at this new life I was building, far away from the lies and deception of the past, I realized something. Emily had taken a lot from me. My trust. My love. My belief in the person I thought she was. But in the end, she had given me something too. She had given me a reason to start over. And this time, I was getting it right. The end.